The Bloody Podcassacre with Zac Walters and Kennedy Catherine.
Hello! Nope.
Do not scream at me.
Sorry.
How are you?
I'm in a very great mood.
I know you are, because we're here for another episode of the Bloody Podcassacre, and you get to talk about one of your favorite things.
The movie Mother.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the most excited I've been for an episode.
Really? Over Hereditary?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was excited for Hereditary, and now that we've gotten into this groove, I am so excited to just give all of my love that I can to this movie.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for me too, but I have some complex feelings.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about when you first saw it.
So I saw this in the theaters when it came out. It honestly blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I went with a couple of friends. I was one of the people who, about 20 minutes towards the end, when it's in the midst of everything happening, I figured it out. Oh my gosh. I started pinning it all together. Literally, my mind was racing. And the friends that I went with were there's no way that you figured this out. Doesn't make sense. Whatever. This movie's awful. I didn't grow up in a very religious household. We went to church Sundays sometimes, but I had knowledge of the Christian faith. Mm-hmm. That's essentially what this movie is about. And so I figured it out. But when I first saw it, I was this was 10 out of 10 amazing. It is so anxiety inducing. It is kind of everything. It's not very horror.
Well, no. Jennifer Lawrence had said it's not a horror film as much as it is a giant analogy, but the film had to be classified as a horror to mentally prepare audiences for the atrocities depicted on scene.
Very fair.
On screen, sorry.
Yeah. And yeah, I literally have nothing to add to that because that is 100% true. I would definitely say it's more of a thriller.
Okay, yeah. Thriller, I guess. Yeah.
It's a suspense movie.
It's just anxiety inducing.
That's literally all it is. Those last 40 minutes of this movie are such a whirlwind in the best way possible. I don't want anything else from it. In my mind, it's chef's kiss. Just because I think what really does it for me is, like we said, this movie is a very religious movie with a lot of religious undertones, even though it's not explicitly told that. But it's also a look about how the human race is as a whole and how we are doing as humans on this planet.
It's a look at environmentalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
I ended up going to see this movie 2 or 3 times after in the theaters because I was so hooked.
I had bought tickets to it for a date.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told the girl I was going with that I did not want to date her, but that we could go see the movie. Understandably, she did not want to do that. So I took a friend, Bridget, who I am going to apologize to formally right now because we hated it. Really and thoroughly. I have never been more upset by a movie than I was by this. I went home and I sat in the silence and the dark at my island in my kitchen by myself for probably 2 hours.
Just thinking?
Thinking and feeling awful. I've talked about this before, that if a movie makes me feel bad, I think I hated it. Mm-hmm. This is one of those movies that I flipped on that I know I really loved it. I thought it was very smart. Mm-hmm. But I was one of those people that popped out of the womb wanting to be a mother. And I have extremely intense feelings around fertility and pregnancy and babies and everything. I had zero preparation for how this movie turns out. And I thought it was so gratuitous and unnecessary because it takes an extremely violent turn. And
very.
I think there is probably a lot of people that are upset by seeing. It's not the same as, okay, you watch a movie and there's been, say, Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary was one of the first, or I think actually was the first movie that ever depicted the death of a small child. So you see in the movie that there's this toddler. You kind of grow up with this toddler a little bit, and then the toddler is killed. There's something about that that's I don't know. It's a plot device that makes sense. In this, it is so barbaric.
Mm-hmm. And it's fast.
And it's, it was a very rough watch for me. But like I said, I've flipped on how I feel about it, and that I think it's very, very smart. I agree that it is an extremely well-made sort of 10 out of 10 film. just have bad feelings about it.
That's fair. Yeah, it's the anxiety.
Yes.
It's, when I watch this in the theaters, it triggers a fight or flight response.
Oh, I almost left.
Because you're like, I don't know what to do. Like, so much is happening. I don't know. And it's like, for a long period of time, it kind of builds, like you slowly get this tension happening, but all of a sudden it just is like you are running full pace for 45 minutes and you do not stop.
And it's so surreal. That's one thing that I appreciate a lot about this movie, is that the sense of realism around it is never quite there. Mm-hmm. There's very much a feeling of these people are removed from reality. They exist in a type of universe that we're not entirely in. And so that's very helpful for building that feeling of this movie. It's a lot like being in a dream where you want it to end and things just keep getting weirder and stranger, but rooted in some sense of reality that it is extremely anxiety-inducing and upsetting rather than being like, I can take myself out of this.
And I think that, you know, a lot of people also dislike this movie because it all of a sudden just starts throwing so much toward the end with that random guest appearance. And... you know, it's like all of a sudden, like, there's 100 people in the room.
What?
I just thought of when Lady Gaga was doing her Star is Born press tour, and she kept saying, there could be 100 people in the room. 99 of them could not believe in you, but you just need one person. And that one person was Bradley Cooper. And she said that for every single press event, and it became a meme. But I said that there's like 100 people in the room.
Right.
And you're like,
all of them believed in him.
Yeah. Yes. 100 of them believed in him,
yes.
and 0 of them believed in Mother.
There's not one moment in this movie where you don't feel so bad for her.
I know. You literally just like somebody help.
Somebody just let her leave. Let her walk into that tall grass and never
literally
come back.
Just anybody.
Anybody
she has
care
nobody
about her.
on her side, not even her husband. Anyways, before we really dive deep in.
Let's actually dive deep in.
Let's dive deep in.
Okay.
Yes, let's get into it. Kennedy, take it away.
I will. I would love to. Thank you so much. In the burnt-out remains of a large house, him, an acclaimed poet struggling with writer's block, places a crystal object on a pedestal in his study. The ruined house morphs into a lovely home on a beautiful landscape. In bed, Mother, the poet's wife and muse, awakens. While renovating the house, she starts seeing things that unsettle her, including visualizing a beating heart within the walls of the home. One day, a stranger referred to as Man turns up at the house asking for a room, claiming to be a local doctor who thought this was a bed and breakfast. Him readily agrees, and Mother reluctantly goes along with him. During his stay, Man and him bond, drinking together, until Man suffers a coughing fit. As him helps him while he vomits, Mother observes an open wound on his side. Soon, Man's wife, Woman, also arrives to stay. Mother is increasingly frustrated with her guest, but him begs her to let them stay, revealing that Man is a fan whose dying wish was to meet him. However, when Man and Woman accidentally shatter the crystal object which him had forbidden them to touch, Mother kicks them out and him boards up his study. Before Man and Woman can leave, their 2 grown sons arrive and fight over the father's will. The oldest son, who will be left with nothing, severely wounds the youngest brother and flees the home. Him, Man, and Woman take the injured son for help. Alone in the house, Mother follows a trail of blood to find a tank of heating oil hidden behind the basement walls. Upon returning, Him informs Mother that the son has died. Dozens of people arrive at the house to honor the dead son. They behave rudely out of entitlement in ways that irritate Mother. She snaps when they break a sink, partially flooding the house. She orders everyone out and berates him for allowing so many people inside while ignoring her needs. Their argument ends in lovemaking. The next morning, Mother announces she's pregnant. The news inspires Him to finish his work. Mother prepares for the arrival of their child and reads Him's beautiful new poem. Upon publication, it immediately sells out every copy. In celebration, Mother prepares a big dinner, but a group of fans arrive at the house before they can eat. She asks Him to send them away, but he insists he has to be polite and show his appreciation. Mother tries to lock the doors, but more fans arrive. They start stealing things as souvenirs and damaging the house, but Him is oblivious, basking in the affection that he's receiving. Hundreds of people fill the house, and an increasingly disoriented, pregnant Mother watches it devolve into absolute chaos. Military forces battle a cult of frenzied fans who tear rooms apart and practice religious rituals. Amidst gunfire and explosions, the poet's publicist organizes mass executions. Mother goes into labor and finds Him. He takes her to his study, which he reopens so she can give birth there. The havoc outside subsides. Him tells Mother that his fans want to see the newborn son, but she refuses and holds her son tightly. But when she falls asleep, Him takes the child outside to the crowd, which passes the baby around wildly until his neck is inadvertently snapped. Mother wades into the crowd where she sees people eating her son's mutilated corpse. Furious, she calls them murderers and stabs them with a shard of glass. They then turn on her, viciously beating and attempting to strangle her until Him intervenes. He implores Mother to forgive them, but she escapes, making her way to the basement oil tank and punctures it with a pipe wrench. Despite her husband's pleas, she sets the oil alight and it explodes, destroying the crowd, the house, and the surrounding environment. Mother and Him survive, though she is horrifically burned, while Him is completely unscathed. He asks for her love, and she agrees. He tears open her chest and removes her heart. As he crushes the heart with his hands, a new crystal object is revealed. He places it on its pedestal, and once again, the house is transformed from a burnt-out shell into a beautiful home. In bed, a new mother appears and wakes up, wondering aloud where Him is.
Wow.
I felt like I got lost in my own reading there.
It's hard because without like physical, like
Names
realistic
and-
names, like we have him, mother, man, woman,
Yeah.
2 sons, you know, it's kind of hard to follow along.
Yes, but there really is just those 4 central characters.
Yeah.
Mother, Him, and then the 2 guests.
Yeah. Everybody else is just a side note. I want to say that I think that this is my favorite Jennifer Lawrence film. I think that her acting in this movie is so top notch. There's like a lot of characters I find in scary movies, kind of like Final Girl syndrome. She doesn't have that per se, but if you've ever seen Prometheus, the character, I don't remember who plays her. Noomi Rapace?
Noomi Rapace, yeah.
Yes.
Girl with the dragon tattoo.
Yes, the original. So she plays like the main character, but like she keeps getting injured and gives birth, and like, you know, she like never stops, even though like how damaged she is.
Right.
And that's the same with Jennifer Lawrence's character. And it's like a main theme in the movie is she just keeps giving. That is her role, is to keep giving, providing.
Having absolutely no boundaries at
Yes,
all.
no. And just giving and giving to whoever comes.
Yes.
Expecting people to take care of what she's given.
And to love her and care
Yes.
for her, and nobody does.
No one does.
The line that kills me in this movie is at the very, very end when he says, about to blow up the house, and he says, "I love you." And she said, "You never loved me. You just loved how much I loved you." Oh,
Wow.
that is heartbreaking.
When I was just thinking how we like do this format, this is another one of those movies where I don't think I have just one favorite scene.
I don't either.
It's because this movie bleeds from one scene to another. You know, it's a continuous run.
That is one criticism I will make from a logistics point of view. When I did see this in theaters, it is one continuous shot that follows Mother
Yes.
throughout this house, and nothing ever really breaks. It did make me nauseous. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like found footage, but there's just something about the way
It
that
never
it's shot.
stops.
Yeah,
It's just, it's a constant moving.
continuously in motion. Yeah.
I also love that it's a looping movie, you know? I do love movies like where Saw, it does the same thing where it starts and then by the time you get to the last movie, like it kind of ties into the beginning, or
Right.
Final Destination, sorry. You know, the last movie, it ties into the first one and it's just a cycle. I like those kind of films because it makes it feel like it doesn't have to end. Even though I, at points, was like, this needs to end for everybody's sake.
In Mother?
Yes. I just wanted everybody to be okay.
Do you think, so the very, very beginning of the movie begins on the face of a woman who is the first mother, or
Yes.
maybe not the first, we don't know.
A mother, one of the mothers.
One of the mothers. And then we move into Jennifer Lawrence's mother. And then at the very end, we go into a third mother.
Yes.
Do you think that was Jennifer Lawrence's voice?
No, I don't think so.
It is a woman who looks a lot like her.
Yeah. But I think it's just supposed to represent, you know, the same character, but...
So I don't have a favorite scene per se, but I do, in trying to prepare for this, I did come up with one, which is the scene right after the baby is killed. She turns on the crowd and starts screaming murderer and murderers at the crowd. Her acting is incredible, but for some reason I had a memory. She let out like one sort of earth-shattering scream that kind of like punctured something, and that doesn't happen.
It does.
When?
So when the army or like the soldiers are in the house raiding the house and there was the execution order, she's going into labor.
Right. But I was thinking like post the death of her child, that she like unleashes something on this crowd. And in a way that she does, I feel like she could have gone bigger with that, because my feeling around that is I would have murdered everybody in the house.
Mm-hmm. There's a surprise guest in this movie.
This was so rogue.
It just like...
Javier Bardem's publicist, who comes in at the end, is Kristen Wiig.
Yeah, just like...
Why?
I don't know. They really just were like, maybe she was working on another film and they were like, do you want to come in and do this? And she probably said yes.
I would think that would be sort of my favorite scene, is when she finally just fucking loses it.
And she all of a sudden, like, does she have guns? I don't remember.
No, she doesn't.
But those people are just shooting people on the ground. And then she gets blown out the window. She is gone. A bomb goes off in that room and she is, like, sucked out like an airplane. I just don't have words for this movie. It's one of those movies where it's just like, I have so much love for it.
Can I tell you about some of my notes that I made before we head into what I assume is, you probably have so much to say.
I just have a lot on like each
Theory
character,
and all of that. Yeah.
And what they actually represent or who they represent.
When this movie started, it is a beautifully shot film. The set is really beautiful, and I kept thinking, this is my dream life. To be redecorating your home in the middle of nowhere where no one can bother you, with your author spouse. Preferably in my life, I am the author and also my own spouse. But he would be an insufferable person to live with. Oh my God. Just living with a poet who's walking around. When he finishes his poem and he's standing in the doorway, basking in the glow of himself, I was like, I would kick your ass off that porch. You are the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate him. But yeah, that set is so gorgeous. And also I love, I can never say his last name right.
Darren Aronofsky.
I always want to say Aronofsky for some reason. What a great filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like Requiem for a Dream.
Ugh, that's a rough movie for me.
I've only seen it once and it's gut-wrenching.
It's incredible, but it's a hard watch.
And
Black Swan.
Black Swan, great. Mother, what else did he do?
I'm not sure.
I'm going to do a quick little Google.
I read this thing that they were talking about, that they didn't know exactly what they wanted, how they wanted the house to look. But then when they were studying Victorian homes, they realized that a lot of them were built in a hexagon sort of shape, and that they chose to do that because they never wanted the camera to be facing a blank wall, straight wall. They always wanted there to be some sort of corner or something that you were looking at.
I just read, so much about this. Darren studied film and social anthropology at Harvard University, and then the American Film Institute, where he studied directing. He won several awards after completing his senior thesis film, Supermarket Sweep, which went on to become a National Student Academy Award finalist. Did he make Supermarket Sweep?
There's no way. Supermarket Sweep is so old, but also incredible. Have you ever watched it?
Yes, there's a new version right now.
Oh, but have you watched the old version?
Oh, yes. I've wanted to go, I've wanted to go Supermarket Sweep characters for Halloween so many years.
Let's do it.
Right? You just have to have a plain colored sweater, your name tag, a children's cart. Supermarket Sweep was a short film.
Yeah.
He also did The Wrestler. I never saw that movie.
I did. It's good.
He did, yes, we know Black Swan. He also did Noah. He loves a good biblical movie.
He does. I wonder if he's a religious man.
I don't think so.
Like, we'll talk about the theories and all of the religious analogy in this, but it is a strange amalgamation of things. It is not just one thing.
No.
And Mother's character doesn't have a biblical equivalent.
No, she does. That's the one thing that is, like, kind of separate, is that, yeah, she's more... I mean, she kind of is a representation of biblical...
She's a representation of Mother Nature, but in the way that all of these characters have an exact biblical equivalent, she does not.
No, yeah, she's just, like, supposed to be, like, Gaia, or, like, yeah, Mother Nature. Didn't Darren and Jennifer, aren't they dating?
They broke up a couple years ago. She's married now, but yeah, they did date briefly.
Right. I don't know, have we mentioned Jennifer Lawrence's hair in this film?
It is the most beautiful thing.
The real star of that movie was Jennifer Lawrence's hair.
It's a wig, definitely. But I kept thinking, I want this life so badly. only if I can have the hair.
And it's like a nice, like, cool gray almost, like a dirty, ashy blonde. And there's this one that she has, like, and it's like a fishtail, and it's like massive. It like encompasses her shoulder
The
width.
thickest hair you've ever
And it like
seen.
goes down to her, like, her hips. And it's this, there was this one fishtail braid, and I was just like, you did it.
This home,
Go off wig.
Pop off wig. If what happened didn't happen, honey could make a fortune as an Instagram influencer.
Oh my God, yes.
And when she had that baby, her and her poet husband, they would have been set for life. YouTubers,
like,
fame.
she probably would have had, like, I'm picturing, like, fruit trees. And she has, like, photos of her holding her child with, like, you know, like, taking oranges off a tree. And, like, making so many charcuterie boards.
She would wear so much linen.
Yes. Ugh.
Do we
move into that lifestyle?
I genuinely was thinking this the whole time, that if neither one of us finds ourselves in an adult partnership, we're just going to have to move into that home together.
I would love a hexagon home.
Me too. And it's big. We wouldn't have
It was
to talk.
massive. Well, I would hope we'd talk.
No, I would hope we would talk too.
Okay.
I'm just saying, if we need
We have enough space, yeah. We'd have space for space.
Yes.
Wow. Sign still delivered.
I'm yours.
I'm yours too.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the meaning of this movie.
So, overall, I think that the best way to put this movie is... This movie is a really close look at human nature, I think, and how we have treated the earth and how we have treated people, you know?
I almost started crying.
But it
true.
really is. It's like this, once again, like just taking everything from something and never giving back.
Yeah, and there's like this structure in place, what Jennifer Lawrence is, that is such a concrete pillar. All she does is give and ask nothing in return,
and fix, and yes.
everyone around her abuses it to the point of the breaking point. Great representation of human nature and the way that we've treated the earth. It's really heartbreaking.
It honestly, it's quite sad when you really think about it. I know Darren also said that this movie can be seen as selfishness of the creative process and disappearing into one's art. Like, he said that he's never gone into that himself, but he understands that he could get there.
I think that's an important distinction. I think that that's something as a creative person that I really reject, is this notion that you have to give your entire self to your art, or that art has to be born from trauma or isolation. It can come from anything, and you don't have to be a tortured soul.
Yeah. One thing that I want to add to that is that being a creative doesn't mean that you have to create for other people.
No.
That's one thing that I think I really struggled with recently, is like, I always feel like if I'm not posting on Instagram what I'm creating, then I'm not an artist. This episode of Podcassacre is deep. I'm getting like...
Well, I was just going to say that I think that sometimes that is less of a commentary on art as much as it is on society's idea of productivity.
Yeah.
That if there's not a product that you are pushing out or giving to someone, that it's a wasted time. Because even today, I was thinking about how making a podcast and doing stuff like this takes a lot of time and energy that you never see a return from. So if I sit and it takes me 3 hours to watch a movie, and then I make the notes, and then I listen to other stuff, that can be 5 to 6 hours.
And then edit, and you know that...
And all of that work, which consumes so much of my time, can feel needless. And so then you don't feel like a productive person. But the actuality is you are creating something, and there are people appreciating it. But even if they weren't, even if I was just doing something that makes me happy, because it does make me happy, that is fulfilling in and of itself.
Wow. You really said it all. And I'm so happy to be on this podcast with you.
I'm so happy to be on this podcast with you.
No more.
Okay, we can't. Well,
no.
Just don't look at me anymore.
No. Boo, scary. I don't know.
I feel grounded. I feel rooted in reality now. Okay, anyways, moving on.
Let's get into it.
Okay.
We'll go through every character slowly. Okay. This is also a lot of my own personal things, and also with the help of the internet, of what I believe. So Jennifer Lawrence is Mother Earth, and she's defending the living, breathing organism that she's built into the perfect home. So I think that both Jennifer Lawrence and the home are kind of one, because she always hears the heartbeat. So I kind of picture Earth being the home, even though they live in this desolate place. Desolate's not the right word. Uncivilized place. It's very full of trees and grass for miles. It's one single home. There's no civilization. She's creating it for them. It's for the two of them. And so she's given so much like life into this planet, fixing the walls, and she's making sure that everything's good for the two of them. And all she does is give, and which I think the earth just gives and we just take.
In essence, like the home is the structure and she is the spirit.
Yes. We empathize with this character because sometimes all you do is give. And it's not like you have to get anything in return, but she gives and only gets pain back. Mm-hmm. But then we have Javier Bardem. I kind of almost butchered that name.
Otherwise known as Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Yes. And he is credited capital H. Interesting that, she's mother with an exclamation point, all lowercase. But he's also a poet and a blocked artist who doesn't fulfill the serial women in his life and is distracted by seeking fame and attention. His work reflects the Bible, and the people who become adoring fans of his work are disciples and followers of his faith.
So he is God.
Yes. So out of nowhere, man who shows up, Ed Harris, is the character Adam. One point he becomes ill and Jennifer Lawrence finds him vomiting over a toilet and has that open wound on his side. This is what we find out is the rib of Adam, who is used to make Eve, the first two people. And Eve is played by the mischievous Michelle Pfeiffer. Very interesting role for her in this.
I have to say, we know that this podcast is dedicated to Toni Collette. Everything we do for her. Mm-hmm. Michelle Pfeiffer was the first love of my life.
Do you know what I just remembered?
What?
Speaking of Michelle Pfeiffer, one of our first interactions that I remember is you and I having a conversation on Twitter about Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, and that I said Anne Hathaway is the best Catwoman.
I have not seen anybody else play Catwoman. I refuse.
You know what it is for me? Is Anne Hathaway in this one scene as Catwoman is on her bike, and she is in her leather suit. She is double cheeked up on a Sunday, looking hot as hell, and she zooms away, and that's why I love her.
Okay, well that's not a good enough reason, first of all.
Okay, you would love her too.
I don't like Anne Hathaway. Polarizing opinion.
Okay. I mean, I don't really either, but in that scene specifically...
Let me correct myself. I don't dislike Anne Hathaway. I just am not...
She's not
I'm
like
not
one
a
of your
fan.
favorites,
No.
yeah.
It was interesting because she hasn't been in much in recent years, and so I was really excited when I saw her in this trailer. So I anticipated this excitement around her being in this movie because I've seen her play unlikable characters before and loved her because she plays a very good villain. She just has that face. I couldn't stand her in this movie. Like, I didn't even enjoy. I enjoyed her performance because she's a great actress, but I hated this character so fiercely that I didn't even want to see her.
Yeah, but it's weird because, like, when you think of Adam and Eve, you don't think of them as these terrorizing characters.
Not at all.
We know that they don't obey what they've been told. To see them as, like a villain almost, and, like, this really hateable character, it's very interesting direction almost in writing.
I think it was interesting that they made her such an adversary for Jennifer Lawrence's character.
Yeah.
I wonder exactly what that choice was, because at the core of it, Eve was a temptress. And for Ed Harris's character, she is.
Yeah.
I gotta say, if there's one thing I learned from this movie, I think the real secret to the spice of life, having a sexy marriage for 25 plus years, be slightly unhinged.
Yeah.
They were tonsil hockey. They loved
everywhere.
Everywhere.
And you know what?
Good for them.
Go for it. Their two children.
Ugh.
Their two children represent Cain and Abel.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book of Genesis, Cain and Abel are the first two sons of Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Cain, the firstborn, was a farmer, and his brother Abel was a shepherd. The brothers made sacrifices to God, but God favored Abel's sacrifice instead of Cain's. And then Cain treacherously murdered his brother Abel, just like in the film. We're still following the same biblical line. Pretty much the creation of life is what's happening in this movie. Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer's character are told not to go into the study nor to touch the crystal. The study represents the Garden of Eden. The crystal represents the forbidden fruit, or the apple. We all know that story, and if you don't, maybe good for you. But they destroy it, wreaking havoc eventually on the house. They bring worshippers for the work, but eventually it's just disciples. They break the sink. I don't know how true this one is, but I read that it's the pipes bursting is in relation to the Great Flood.
Yes, I've read that as well.
Eventually we have God impregnating mother, which gives birth to the Messiah, which is Jesus. Baby dies, sacrifice of Jesus, they eat him, which eventually the death of the baby and the chaotic communion leads to the revelations, which is the end of the world. And we have people locked up. We have death. We have
violence, mass executions,
law enforcement trouble.
Yeah.
We have anything that you can think of that has happened in 2020 is essentially the last 45 minutes of this movie. Then we have the oil deep in the basement, which is deep in the earth. She ignites it, restarting the earth, and hopefully God will learn. I don't think it ever will.
People are too selfish.
Yeah, and think about civilization, how it's happened. Everyone wipes themselves out. So that's my character breakdown for everything.
You did a beautiful job. Thank you. Darren Aronofsky has said in a pretty succinct summary for the environmental message, the planet is being undone by humanity. I don't blame one gender over the other gender. I'm not sure why he said that. It must have been in regard to something. But he said, I think about how people are insatiable and how there's this endless consumption. Basically exactly everything that you've just said. I find it interesting when these movies are made that we attribute so much of the messaging and the intelligence, the genius of it, to the entirety of the cast and the crew and the process of it. But openly, most of the cast has been like, oh yeah, I had no idea. So here's a couple quotes. Jennifer Lawrence clearly was in the know because she did a lot of press where she broke down what it all meant. She was also in a relationship with Darren Aronofsky, so I'm not sure what kind of a difference that made. But when they premiered the film, Ed Harris said, I still don't know what to think of all of it. Javier Bardem said, basically, I did not know what I was doing. I don't even really speak English.
Amazing.
There is portions of the movie that they left open to interpretation. So one of the things that Zac had pointed out that I definitely noticed it the first time around, but I just kind of forgotten about it. And you said, keep your eye on it, see what you think. There is this elixir that Mother takes. It's a yellow powder that she adds to water.
It almost looks like dry mustard.
Yeah.
Or paint.
She'll have these moments of hallucination almost. And that's when she's hearing like the beating of the heart in the wall and the room kind of goes, and then she'll take this elixir and things will sort of calm down. My natural instinct was to think that it was some sort of anti-anxiety. And it is, I think. So one of the producers said Darren wanted people around him to interpret and give their opinions about it, and it was never spelled out for anyone. We talked about the feeling of it and what he wanted it to feel like, but he never said, so the tincture is blank. And then he said, to me, the tincture was something that grounded her and brought her back to reality. As humanity starts coming in the door, you start to see the harm they're doing to her world and her house. The sort of blackness that happens, the degradation, the little bits of pieces of destruction that start happening. And the tincture, in some ways, I think, was a self-medication. Yeah, you get that impression. There was a couple theories online that it was something that him had provided to her to keep her sedated. And I had read that before I had watched it, but I couldn't really make sense of that because it seemed to be the thing that made her better.
I know that Darren said like that he's never going to give away what it was, which I kind of like it. One thing that I read online was that some people think it's called cava.
I read this too.
Which is known for its brown color, but also cava tea can be a yellow tint, which is essentially like a natural, potent sedative almost. Also gives you some sort of weird side effects like paranoia. My theory is kind of out there with it all being, related to Mother Nature and like everything, because she also uses yellow paint on the walls. Is it supposed to represent like sunshine or like the sun in some weird way, and like it's feeding her to keep her alive?
That's interesting.
That's like my only like weird thing where I'm like, I'm putting this really out there, but also this movie's out there.
That doesn't seem like a far off concept. That seems like something they would have done. I think I've read something about the correlation between the color, but I didn't read what it meant.
But yellow is such like it represents so much happiness, literally like a ray of light. It could really be whatever you want it to be, but
sometimes I wonder if lots of these things have no meaning at all.
Is a yellow liquid and she likes yellow. Or it's turmeric. Like, it literally could be simple as that.
It could be stevia. It could be a crystal light.
Yes. That's kind of it for the yellow.
This is, once again, sort of like Hereditary in the way that you can theorize so much about it, but when you actually just look at it, it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. It's there. Yeah. It's like, it's right on the film. There's nothing to be like, well, maybe it could be this. It's like, well, sure, but it's not. It's about the deterioration of Earth.
Do you know how it did critically?
I don't know. I want to say it was very hit and miss.
Every once in a while, movies like this kind of get in their own way in terms of being a little pretentious.
Yeah. But it's also a modern take on like creation of Earth and how, like we could be watching Passion of the Christ.
Truly, and I have. Terrible movie.
I have never seen it and I do want to watch it just for personal experience.
Yeah, this movie is pretty split. 6.6 on IMDb, 68% Rotten Tomatoes, 56% of users like this film for Google. I get that.
Yeah. It's those people who don't understand it and also don't care to go dig deep.
Well, I think it's people just like myself who it's like, okay, if it feels bad, then it was bad.
Yeah. No,
rather
that's
than,
understandable.
Yeah. Anything that can be slightly polarizing is going to have a negative pushback. Anything that people are sensitive about, a lot of people have a hard time removing themselves from what is done with that topic.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. One thing I'm reading here regarding the reception is that Deadline Hollywood gave the film an F cinema score grade in April 2020, and it's one of only 22 films to receive a rating like this. And they gave it an F because of its controversial nature, misleading advertisement. The advertisements for this movie really make it seem like it's going to be like this horror film about some sort of cult that is attacking this couple.
My perception of it was that it was going to be a... What's The Strangers?
Like a break and enter type,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
A lot of the advertisements and marketing had Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer in it. And when you break it down, they are sort of the middle part, but they're not in the beginning and they're not in the end.
No, they're I would say probably in it for about 10 minutes in total together.
Probably. You have to... We're entering into an era where if you can't warn your audience that this thing is going to happen, people are going to be super upset about it.
Yeah. Controversial material, you know, just in general. What a thing.
I wonder why they chose to market it this way.
I think it's because they probably didn't want to give away that it was a biblical movie, so they wouldn't... When you think about it, if you were to market a scary movie, quote-unquote scary movie, that's just about Christianity, I think a lot of people would take a lot more offense to it versus just marketing it as a horror movie and then having it be a mystery for you to watch.
I see what you're saying. But I found the advertising tonally was so different. The one we watched a trailer just before we started recording, and there was like black and red text over it, which is so
and like
not
a very
the feel of it.
like the staccato violin that's like it's so tense. And I mean, like, yes, this movie is very tense, but it's not what you expect. And it's almost like a funny movie in a way rather than scary. Like, you kind of laugh at it because it's so corny and ridiculous. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, no. It's so out there.
I didn't feel that way. I found that this is hard. It's so hard to explain, but the feeling around it and the sort of surreal nature that extends throughout it lends to its own realm of realism that didn't make it feel laughable enough for me to be it didn't remove me enough for me to feel it was laughable.
Yeah. Whereas like when we were talking earlier, like The Nun, yeah, you're right. It's just so off the rails.
It is.
Like we've called it before, it is a fucking roller coaster.
It's probably the most disturbing movie I've seen in theaters. It was the only one that I've ever genuinely been like, I'm going to leave. And I felt outraged. The part that really, really upset me is that when the crowd is passing the baby around, the visuals and the sounds that accompany that of a baby in distress, I was like, that is inappropriate. But once again, I'm not a person who thinks that there should be parameters of what we should be able to see on film. I don't want to make that call. So I back down from that. But in that moment, I did feel like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
It's very interesting because I have such an opposite reaction when I was in the theater with that movie because the person I went with started laughing during that part. So it kind of like, you know, snaps you out of that like mirage of what's happening and you're like, oh, haha, weird. It was like, why are you laughing at this kind of thing? And so it was just like, it was an uncomfortable situation because it's not a laughable scene, but then you have someone laughing who you're with and you're like,
it breaks the tension.
Yeah. There are still 2 movies that I've seen in theaters, in my personal experience, more disturbing that I thought I was going to have to... One, I did leave.
Which one?
It wasn't a horror movie. It was supposed to be like a documentary-style drama, Lords of Chaos, with Rory Culkin.
That movie was notoriously known for that.
I had such a bad panic attack. I went to the washroom but this was during like a rougher time in my life. And so came back and was like, I gotta go. But I really also made that movie way worse than it was because I read all of the reviews and specifically what was happening in this movie. So I was prepared to see a lot of gore. The other one was Green Inferno by Eli Roth. That was just so... I've talked about this, I think, with you. It was so violent because it's about cannibals.
Oh, I've not seen it.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Cannibals, hot topic right now.
Yes, very so. Very much so. It has Daryl Sabera in it, who is...
Spy Kids.
Spy Kids boy.
Can I just say that when I was a kid and I saw Spy Kids, I wanted to be an actress so bad I cried myself to sleep.
Because you wanted to be in Spy Kids?
So badly.
Amazing. Yeah, I thought I was a spy growing up.
We all did.
Those two movies really resonate with me, being like, I am so deeply disturbed and feel like I'm going to literally leave my body that I have to leave this theater. On the verge of leaving this theater, or did.
Yeah.
Because I was so, like, I could not handle what was happening on screen.
For sure.
So it's weird to think, like, that was Mother for you, because I did feel uneasy at points, but never to the point where that I wanted to, like, remove myself from where I was.
Well, I think there's two things that were happening for me. I'm super conscious of my boundaries in terms of film.
Mm-hmm.
I will almost never put myself in a situation in a theater where I don't really know what I'm walking into, because I know that the likelihood of my feeling uncomfortable or upset is that much more likely if I can't leave or if I can't look away and there's no escape. So I don't see a lot of things in theaters that I even feel slightly questionable about. And that was such a shock.
Right.
Also, like I said, I think I don't know, I can't speak for all women or childbearing people, but I have such a strong attachment to that. Mm-hmm. I'm very, very sensitive around that content.
That makes total sense. If I think in the situation that I was in with the person I was with, if that didn't happen, I think I would probably... I still do completely understand. I think I would have just had different feelings regarding that scene. Probably stronger feelings, too, regarding the movie in general. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of it.
Yeah. Do you want to rate it? It's a hard movie to rate.
I know.
It doesn't really fit the scale very well.
Scary?
It's not.
Probably like a 3.
It's not, once
2.
again, not scary as much as it is upsetting.
Yeah.
So probably, like, for me, like a 1. There's no jump scares or anything.
There's
like
one that I think it's like, I can't remember if it was Cain or Abel, but they come and like surprise Jennifer Lawrence at one point. True. And that's the only like jump scene. And so yeah, it's probably like a 1 or a 2. Unsettling, a full 10.
I'm not kidding when I say I sat in the dark in my own home in silence for at least an hour, if not more.
I mean, all the spoilers are out on the table in this podcast, so it's going to take a lot of the unexpected away, but I still think that if you are a listener and you are going to go view this movie after, it'll still blow you away.
There's no way to describe the intense anxiety you'll feel.
It's just so fast-paced. It feels like it's never ending. And then it finally does, and you were like, what the hell? 10 out of 10 unsettling.
I agree.
Story?
I would give it a solid 7.
Yeah, I think it's creative. I would also give it a 7. I mean, it's the oldest story in the book from what we're aware.
Legitimately.
Literally, it's the first story ever told. But, you know, I think it's done in such a creative way that that's why I like the story. Because it's not cut and paste. It's not like, hi, I am God. This is Mother Earth. We are going to have... It's also interesting that Mother Earth had a baby. Sorry, now I'm just thinking about that. And it wasn't Mary.
I thought about that a lot. Though there isn't exactly a direct equivalent, I'm unsure why, if they were going to go biblical, that they didn't make her a stronger Virgin Mary figure rather than Mother Earth, but they wanted to have this whole side plot with the oil and the environmentalism as well. So they kind of needed her character to be a bit more broad.
Mm-hmm. And like they didn't want to bring in like a Joseph and a Mary, you know?
Right.
I think they just wanted to throw Jesus in and it being, you know, his son. So overall, a paper cut or a full bloody massacre?
I think for how much it affected me, I have to give it a full bloody massacre.
Yeah, I also am... I was going to say one too many nails. No, this definitely is.
3 out of 4 stigmatas. Or 4 out of 4 stigmatas, actually.
Yeah. It's definitely a full bloody massacre for me.
Yeah.
It's one of my top horror movies. Even though, yes, we've said it's not horror, but I cannot get enough of it. And I could watch it once a day easily.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies that I really like, but have no desire to see again. This is one of them. If I really wanted to share this movie with someone, which there's definitely been people that I recommended to, I wouldn't even take the bullet to watch it with someone else.
Oh, I have.
No. Congratulations, though.
Thank you.
You're a stronger person than I.
You know, that's what they say. Thank you so much for listening.
This has been another episode of the Bloody Podcassacre. You can follow us at Podcassacre on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, never Facebook. We are also on YouTube at the Bloody Podcassacre. Subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends, your family, all of your loved ones. It's the greatest gift you can provide. You can also email us at thebloodypodcassacre@gmail.com or send us a DM for anything. If it's recommendations, criticisms, we'll take those too. Just offers of friendship and love.
I would prefer constructive criticisms.
Yeah,
I don't want hate.
Don't be mean.
I don't need hate comments.
Boundaries.
Yes. We are so thankful for everybody
We are.
on this wonderful horror journey.
Until next time.
God help you.